Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Nieland. I'm Director of Energy Solutions for Faith Technologies. We're going to talk a little about intelligent electrical networks tonight, or smart grids. It's a little bit difficult to talk about smart grids without knowing why. Why are we talking about smart grids? Where is this whole thing coming from? So, our energy landscape is changing. So by 2040, we will have twice the growth in electrical energy need than we will in all other energy needs. Where is that coming from? Well, think about electric vehicles. Bloomberg says by 2040, more than 1/3 of every vehicle sold will be an electric or electric hybrid car. All right, so if I plug my car in at night at home in a home charger, it takes about 3 kilowatts of electricity. Now, for those of you who don't know what a kilowatt is, that's about twice of what it takes to run the average house in Wisconsin. So that's not so bad. It's at night, businesses are closed, demand's low. On the other hand, the Tesla, Mercedes, Porsche are all coming out with superchargers, so you can charge your car much faster. So instead of taking 6 to 8 hours to charge your car, it'll take 10 to 15 minutes and require 200 kilowatts to 500 kilowatts of electricity. Part of our demand is there, right? So the other thing, we're becoming more digitized. So by the end of 2025, there will be 10 times more digitally connected devices than people. Think about that. I've got a smartphone. My wife's holding on to it right now. She also has my computer in her lap right now. We've got multiple TVs. Those TVs are all internet connected. We like Netflix. I've got Siri. I've got Alexa. All of those are connected, not just out of the fact that they draw power, but they're all connected to data centers, ran by Google or Amazon or Microsoft. And data centers consume huge amounts of energy. How many of you did you use a GPS or a Maps app to get here? Anybody? Yep, you got a couple people. Connected to a big data center. That's where those maps come from. That's where those directions come from. At the same time we're drawing more energy, we're trying to get greener. We're trying to get decarbonized. We're trying to get decentralized. We're looking for ways to improve that. And the problem being, old power plants are very expensive to produce. They take long planning cycles. They take a long time to pay for. Green energy solutions we can put in place much faster, but they present their own challenges from a grid standpoint. So I'm going to throw a bunch of slides up. There's a whole bunch of data here. Don't pay attention to the data, just pay attention to the big red lines. Those are trends. So, graph on the left, wind generation. The cost for doing wind generation for wind turbines decreased 70% over the last 10 years. Solar has decreased 80%, 88% actually, over the last 10 years. So it makes sense. Renewable energy is becoming cheap. Problem with wind doesn't always blow. The sun's not shining at night. I've got to somehow power things at night. Well, we got battery storage, and battery storage has dropped 75% also over the last 10 years. So now I can take excess solar and wind energy, I can store it, I can utilize that energy then at night by discharging the batteries I charged during the day or when it was windy. And if we look at the cost of all this stuff together, we're about the same cost for renewables now as it costs to build a power plant when we take a look at the total life cycle cost. So it makes sense. But it presents its own challenges. Why a smart grid then? Well, the problem is a utility grid is not made to support multiple sources of energy outside the utilities. By doing this, we have a lot of people that are investing in their own energy sourcing, companies, private homes, businesses. They're going to have to work interactively with the utilities. So our current grid, everything's one way. It's made to push energy out. It's made to push energy from a transmission site out to its clients and to its customers. I can add renewables to that, but it's still not made to take energy. It's kind of kludged together to take energy from solar fields or from battery storage or from clients or customers that have those things. But it's a kludgy way of doing it. It's not really made to integrate well. It's still made to push energy out. We need a smart grid. A smart grid is made to take energy both directions. So I can push it to sources, I can take it from sources. And not only can I take it, but I can take it to where it can be best utilized. And utilized most efficiently. And utilized most resiliently to keep everybody up and running and happy. So to do that, there's a few things I need to do. I need interactive communication. So it isn't just moving the energy back and forth, but I need those different systems, those different pieces to talk to each other, both ways. I need to handle site loads. I need, if I'm the utility and I'm taking all this stuff onto this grid, this network that I produced, I need to know, have a better idea dynamically what each of those sites are generating or what they're using. I want to be able to talk to smart buildings, because smart buildings can help me out. If it's a really hot day and I'm in California, they have rolling blackouts or rolling brownouts, right? Because they don't have enough capacity. Wouldn't it be great, though, if I could tell buildings, hey, can you raise your temperature set point by 2 degrees and lower your air conditioning load? I have a brownout. Or I can drop block levels by 10% and reduce energy load. On the other hand, on the receiving end, on the client end, I want to know what the grid status is. I want to know how much energy is available. Am I better off taking energy from the grid or generating on site? If I've got excess energy, do I want to let the grid know that it can take some? Because I've got excess they could use. I want to know how stable the grid is too, because I may say, you know what? It's hot, there's a lot of demand, things might get a little shaky. I need to make sure that my business, my hospital, my grocery store keeps running. In addition to all those communications means, though, we need some other things. So we need front-end intelligence. We need the ability to understand how the grid works and all these things work in concert together. We need to do predictive analytics, something called a digital twin. Digital twin, it's basically a full model of what that grid looks like running inside a computer where I can try different scenarios dynamically while they're happening so I know how to run the real-world grid. I can look at weather and say, you know what, it's going to be cloudy for the next 3 days, so all that solar that I've got on my grid, I can't rely on that. So I need to make sure I'm getting energy from other sources for the next 3 days while it's cloudy. It lets me control the demand. I can increase output of behind-the-meter sources, so I can talk to that business that's got generation capability and say, I need another megawatt, do you have it? Or the business, because it's two-way communication, can go back to the utility and say, I got an extra megawatt of power available, could you use that right now? So traditional grid, I got a failure. I got a transmission line. Transmission lines can run hundreds of miles. And there is redundancy built into the system. So maybe I supplied in a community by 2 different transmission lines. But the issue is that system is not foolproof. If anybody remember, there was the Great Northeast Blackout of 2003. We knocked out 45 million users in the northeastern United States and 10 million in Canada because an oak branch touched a power line, a transmission line. There were people without power for 2 days before they got power back on. Hit the transmission line, software glitch didn't have that utility alert the next utility. That one overloaded, which overloaded the next one, and the next one, and the next one. It just cascaded. So I lose transmission, I go black. Not a very smart grid. So we look at a smart grid. So here we have our same grid. We got a little community microgrid down here on the right. We've got some utility-generated solar and storage over here. We've got some homes. We've got farms. We've got a foundry, office buildings. We lose our transmission, but the grid stays up because we have other generation sources, both directly connected from the utility, because the utility's storing energy in batteries. It's generating energy from solar, but also from these other sites that are behind the meter that are able to push energy back out when needed. Now, our modeling, our smart modeling, our dynamic modeling, our digital twin is looking at the usage, looking at all the different loads in the system, looking at what it can generate, and says, you know what? I only have enough energy for 1 hour. So I got to get rid of some things that are non-critical. So they already have an agreement with our farmers and with our foundry that if they have a critical situation, they can shut them off. And so they do. And the rest of the grid stays running. Now our foundry wants to go offline before it uses all its energy because it needs to shut down some processes that would really mess up their operation. So think of melting metal that suddenly isn't melted anymore. So they calmly shut down. At the same time, our system also talks to our connected buildings up here and says, hey guys, we've got a critical situation, can you help me out? And the building says, well sure, I'll lower my set points because it's winter, I'll drop those back. And I'm going to lower my light levels, and I'm going to let all my occupants know that we're in a critical situation. We've got about an hour worth of power before we're going to maybe have to shut down also. Our foundry takes care of its problems. It comes back and says, hey, I've got energy available yet that I don't need. Can you use it? The grid says, well yeah, I could use it. Please, send it out. I need to keep everybody else running. And so it does, and it reconnects. Our office building, an hour's gone by, still doesn't look like we're going to get things back here from the utility yet, from the main plant. So our office building goes dark. But they were prepared for it. They knew it was coming. Because our community has its own little microgrid, and it's concerned with keeping up critical resources, it wants to keep the hospital running, it wants to keep the police station up, the fire department, grocery store, maybe service stations, because this thing could last for a few days, want to make sure people can get fuel. So it's going to get rid of its connections to the main grid, get a backup connection to the hospital, and it's going to run independently. So now this little community microgrid is working all on its own to keep up its critical resources. And if this thing lasts an extended period of time, it even is smart enough to talk with all of its different sourcing and usage and say, you know what, it's going to be here for a while, so I'm going to get rid of the non-critical loads so I can keep the hospital running, and keep the police station running, and keep the fire department running. Meanwhile, the utility got fixed. Transmission line comes back. They come back on. They communicate that to everybody else within the grid. Other loads come back on, and the microgrid reconnects. All done through that smart network. That two-way communication. So why do I want to do a smart grid? Again, got a dumb system, I push out, nothing comes back. Smart grid lets things go both ways, but it also lets me communicate both ways. So I understand what demand is and what the capabilities are. I get more efficient transmission. It's better if I'm able to source locally than having to send electricity over 200, 300, 400 miles. It's also a lot more efficient. So a lot of people don't realize the electric outlets, if you look around, that we have within our buildings in Wisconsin, we're about 35 to 38% efficient. So think about it. That coal plant that's down the river from us burns coal to generate steam, to turn a steam turbine, to turn a generator set, that goes through a transformer. Every transformer you go through has losses. By the time it gets to the outlet in your house, it's probably gone through 4, 5, 6 of those. It's gone through miles of wire, which, by the way, miles of wire aren't perfect. They use electricity. So by the time you get done, that coal that you started with, only 35% to 38% of the energy in a lump of coal actually makes it to your house. If you have a solar installation, that bumps up to about 80 to 85% makes it to your house. So it's much more efficient. We can restore power quickly after power disturbances, because again, we don't lose the whole grid. It takes a long time to bring a whole grid back up versus just bringing pieces back in place. It helps reduce operation and management costs for utilities. Think, if I don't have to build a coal-fired power plant, or a natural gas peaking plant, or a nuclear plant, think how much money it costs and time it costs and regulation to build one of those versus putting in a 100 megawatt solar field, putting in 100 megawatt hours of battery storage. And ultimately, because of that, it lowers the cost both for the utilities, so they have better profits, and for their consumers, because the energy costs are lower. Reduce peak demand, helps energy rates again. It's easier to integrate large-scale systems into the grid because I'm two-way communicating. Right now, I can put 100 megawatts of solar on. The grid has no idea until it just hits the grid, and then they go, what do I do with this power? I can send it someplace. Now I can coordinate that. So it gets better integration of those customer-owned systems, and I get improved security. I get better resiliency because I'm not relying on 1 or 2 major plants that supply me, but lots of small distributed resources. So that's our basics on a smart grid. I want to thank you for your time and ask if there are any questions. If not, I'll be, okay.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to know if there are any, like, what are some current smart grids in the U.S. that have been successful, and if there's potential, or if it works to build, like a new version of electric cooperative.
So there are a couple rural electric co-ops, one of them in particular in New Hampshire, that already are working off this concept locally. So basically they take a lot of their homes, a lot of businesses that are doing the type of thing we're talking about, and that's how they control their local microgrid. On a small scale, we actually have a microgrid at the Nature Center over in Appleton at Bubolt's that is fully integrated this way also, within that facility, because it can run totally independently with all the different sources and demand within the different buildings there. So it's coming. Utility, and we have several utilities we're working with on the technology also.
Yeah. Can you talk about what kind of, how realistic it is for Northeast Wisconsin or for anywhere in Wisconsin to sort of transition to sort of more of a balance between coal, nuclear, and maybe renewables? So for example, do you see any path to renewables up here in this part of the state?
Actually, we're seeing quite a bit from the utilities on the renewable market, especially when you start looking at not as much with we are starting to look at, but with Alliant and Excel. Both of them have commitments to get a percentage of renewables in place by 2025. Both of them have some larger renewable projects they're executing. They're both also looking at projects to try and do things smarter. So instead of putting in long transmission lines, for instance, is it better to site a small microgrid in a community and power it that way than trying to power it from those long lost transmission locations? So it's coming, slowly but surely. There are states, though, that it's much more attractive. You'll see more of it in Minnesota. We're starting to see more of it in Iowa. It'll come in Wisconsin. It's just going to take some time because of the regulatory climate right now. Yes?
Steve, what do you see as some of the obstacles or barriers to implementing this in northeastern Wisconsin?
The biggest obstacle and barrier I see in northeast Wisconsin is just the current rules and regulations we have in place in the state. So a lot of what you see being executed currently in Wisconsin is all behind the meter, so it's on the customer side of the meter. And it's primarily being able to source for those sites because, again, because of the rules in place, and it's not the utilities, it's the Public Service Commission, there's only so much you can do with that energy outside of behind the meter. And they're working on getting those regulations improved. There's a lot of legislation being proposed. So. Yes?
Are the communication issues, is that something that can be addressed with the cable installations and 5G technology going out?
Exactly. That's how a lot of it's being handled. We're actually going to be demonstrating that with 4 small microgrid solutions at the Experimental Aircraft Association's fly-in in about 2 weeks. The 3rd week of this month. We're going to have 4 microgrids located. There'll be one at each of the 2 campgrounds. There'll also be a small one located at the ultralight field because there's no power at the ultralight field. And then one in our main headquarters at the main grounds on the flight line. And they'll all be communicating interactively with each other. So the very type of thing we're talking about. Then they're all cell modems. They're all 5G. Yes?
Is a smart grid a new grid, or is it a modification of the current grid? And who would actually be in charge of controlling all the digital that keeps track of the input and output?
The answer to that is yes. So it's going to be an integration of adapting portions of the old grid. There will be new portions that will have to be added. You know, as this other gentleman pointed out, a lot of the communications can be handled by wireless communication. A lot of it through cellular. And it's going to be a joint effort, right? Because again, it isn't just the utilities controlling everything, because it's got to be communication both ways. And it's got to be integration both ways.
And then who is going to moderate that, do you think? Like, is that the second part of your question?
So there actually are, so there are several organizations that are currently working between communities, businesses, private, like the Public Service Commission, and utilities to develop those standards.
Okay.
So, yes?
So it seems there's a lot of communication going back and forth. Are you worried about like security at all, like hacking or anything like that with the power grids? Is it going to be more stable or less stable?
I will be honest, the understanding I have of our current grid, I'm much less worried about communications and being hacked and causing problems that way than I am with our current grid.
All right, that's it.
And the reason being, I know of about 5 locations in the country right now that if I really wanted to, I could take down most or all of the current grid.
With just the branch?
Not with just a branch, but I could probably do it with a car. I have certain spots that are very vulnerable that if I ran them, I could probably take out a good portion of most of the grid. The thing that would save us are rural electric co-ops that are able to self-generate. So if you look at Kukwana, if you look at our friends up on Washington Island where they have their own generation, now they need fuel. If you look at places that have hydro generation, some of the smaller co-ops, and there are roughly about 40 plus of those in the state of Wisconsin that do some level of self-generation. So lights wouldn't totally go out, but we'd be hurting for a long time.
Any other questions for Steve? Okay. Oh, one more. Go ahead.
So, it's government. You don't get to choose whether you become a part of a microgrid or not. The government decides that for you. Your municipality would decide that for you.
No, actually, it's right now. If you want to put a microgrid, you can put in a microgrid. If you want to connect to the main grid, it's a conversation with your utility. So that's. We've actually we have 3 full microgrid locations, and we have roughly about 150 different energy generation locations that we've done between Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Colorado, Tennessee, Indiana.
Is it neighborhoods? Is it industrial parks?
It really depends. So in our state, you don't see a lot of community solar. You'll see or community microgrids. We'll see community microgrids in Iowa. We see them in Colorado, Minnesota. As I mentioned, New Hampshire actually has a fairly robust smart system that they've developed in several communities there. It also can just all be standalone or behind the meter. So if you look at, for instance, we're building a new manufacturing site over in Little Chute. That site will be able to run totally independently off grid if needed. The only connection we'll have grid-wise would be a natural gas supply.
That site, what do you mean? That business?
That particular area. Now, there also are cases of where we have microgrids supplying college campuses, and they can operate independently if needed. We have locations where you mentioned business parks. There's a business park in Iowa that recently came up with its own microgrid.
So if you'd like to talk to Steve more about this, you can stick around for you can have a beer after, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah, great.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very
All
much,
right,
Steve.
thank you very much.